Finally, we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle. And as you should know, that nitrogen makes up the majority of our atmosphere. So there's a lot of nitrogen here on Earth. And so we're going to look at how that cycles through. So the atmosphere and into the soils and into living tissue. And so nitrogen is used by plants and animals to make proteins. If you look at amino acids, right, one of their main things that they are right, made up of is nitrogen. So obviously it's very important to living organisms and up in the atmosphere as well. Nitrogen can be combined with other atoms to make compounds. So right, you have diatomic nitrogen gas. Nitrates is NO3, nitrites is NO2, ammonia NH4, and nitrogen dioxide NO2. Obviously there's also um, nitric oxide, which is N2O, right, which is one of our greenhouse gases. So if I would say, to know any chemical formulas, I would definitely know the difference between nitrates, nitrites, and ammonium. And so nitrogen is cycling between the biotic, so the biosphere, living organisms, so all the way from bacteria all the way up to animals, and the abiotic environment, so obviously in the atmosphere and in the soils. And bacteria actually play the most important role in this transfer. So the bacteria are able to take nitrogen, so the N2 or the NO2 or the N2O that's in the atmosphere, and actually fix it into a usable form of nitrogen. So you're looking at N2 to nitrate. Nitrite, and then into nitrate. Nitrifying bacteria are converting ammonia to nitrate, and denitrifying bacteria are fixed into are taking fixed nitrogen and converting it back into atmospheric nitrogen. So just to like go back into wastewater a little bit, right? You have you're going from nitrifying bacteria in the aerobic portion of the secondary treatment and wastewater. So you have that ammonia that's in the urine that's not very good, right? And then it's converting that into nitrite, and then again into nitrate. And then we want to get rid of that nitrate, so we use the denitrifying bacteria. Remember, they are pulling those oxygens off of the nitrate to then allow nitrogen to go out into the atmosphere. So, right, this is very connected to wastewater here, so maybe a little review on that. But it happens in other natural systems in the environment as well. So atmospheric fixation can also result as a lightning, but more often than not, it's bacteria. We obviously are altering the nitrogen cycle by applying nitrogen fertilizers in agriculture. And so depending on whether those are organic or inorganic nitrogens, that is definitely going to play a part in how that affects the nitrogen cycle. So the reason why nitrogen is, a little bit more complicated is because there's a lot of different organisms that allow it to cycle through the different from the lithosphere into the biosphere. So there are these rhizobium, and these they actually live in symbiosis with the roots, usually with legumes. So beans, clover, peanuts are also legumes. And so you usually plant these to allow for the plants to take up the nitrogen and to get really nitrogen rich soil for your crops. There's also other bacterias, that you don't have to know them like specifically, but just so that you know that there are bacteria that are nitrifying and denitrifying. Okay. So just to like run through the nitrogen cycle, we're looking at nitrogen gas converted to ammonia. So this is nitrogen fixation. So this happens through combustion, volcanic action, lightning, and then nitrogen fixing bacteria. You have nitrification, where we're taking ammonia and in conjunction with water is making nitrate through nitrite, right? So it goes NH3 to nitrate, nitrite, which is NO2, going to nitrate, which is NO3. And so this is bacteria that do this in the soil. And once it's in nitrate form, the NO3, the plants can actually take it up into their tissues, and they can incorporate them into proteins and nucleic acids. Again, nucleic acids being DNA and RNA. So then there's ammonification. So this is taking biological nitrogen. So the DNA and RNA and the proteins in your body are actually being converted into ammonia. Organisms need to excrete this. And so you as a human have urine. So you have this urea in urine, or uric acid in bird waste. And denitrification is the reduction of nitrate to N2 gas. So taking those oxygens and pulling them off, so that you're just left with the nitrogen. Again, if you think back to wastewater, hopefully this makes a little sense. So here's a little depiction of the nitrogen cycle that can help you maybe visualize all this together. So again, you have atmospheric nitrogen. Again, 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. Bacteria can take that atmospheric nitrogen and actually convert it into ammonia. The ammonia is then converted by bacteria into nitrite, then coming into nitrate. And then the nitrate is then available to plants, so they can come up and hang out here or whatever, right? Also, denitrifying bacteria can then convert it into atmospheric nitrogen, and thus we have a cycle. Here, right, the nitrogen in the plant and animal tissue, once they're either excreting it or they die, ends up becoming ammonia again through decomposers. So again, bacteria is like the main player in the nitrogen cycle. I think the reason why this is so difficult as opposed to the other ones is because you really need to know the different forms of nitrogen that's there. And so, the N2, NH3, NO2, and NO3, and knowing where they are within the cycle. So really pay attention to this cycle here, the nitrogen cycle. The book has a pretty good explanation of the nitrogen cycle as well, so make sure you're reading that. And that concludes our biogeochemical cycles. If you want to check your understanding, you can go through these questions and see, do you get it? And if you don't know the answer to these questions without looking, then you need to look them up and make sure you know them.